Welcome to the Planning Committee of Gloucester City Council. I'm Councillor Conda. I'll be chairing most of this committee meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years. If you're present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Before we proceed, I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is conducted in accordance with the Gloucester City Council Constitution, which sets out the rules and procedures to ensure efficient, transparent and accountable decision-making. I'll now go down the agenda in item order, starting with apologies. Do we have any apologies? None to record, thank you. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members present have any declarations of interest that they wish to make? And I'm going to say I am Ward Councillor for Kingsholm and Wootton, so I will be sitting out for agenda item 6 and Councillor Castle will take the chair. Are members content for me to sign off the minutes of the previous meeting as a true and accurate record? Yes, thank you. And late material, have members had a chance to look at the late material that came in today? Oh, that's all right with everybody? So, agenda item 5 is a planning application for number 27 Westgate Street. I'll ask the Principal Planning Officer to present the report. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application at 27 Westgate Street for the proposed removal of Condition 7 of Planning Permission 16/00859/FUL in order to allow the Adult Gaming Centre to open to customers unrestricted 24 hours a day. The application site is located within this red boundary line that you can see here to the south side of Westgate Street. Here we have an aerial view image of the site. The immediate area includes a wide mix of uses, including retail, hairdressers, cafes, restaurants, pubs and takeaways. Some of the upper floors of surrounding buildings are under residential use. The application site relates to the right-hand side of this building. The change of use of this building to bingo and amusement was allowed at appeal in 1982. The ground floor is currently occupied by Be Lucky, which is an adult gaming centre, and the upper floors are used as office space in association with this use. The left-hand side of the building is 25 Westgate Street. Here we've got an image of the site looking westwards along Westgate Street. And this is looking eastwards along Westgate Street. The existing opening hours for the use at present are 9 a.m. to midnight Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays, and 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. Sundays and bank holidays. This application seeks to remove the condition that stipulates these opening hours to allow the building to open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's a couple of previous planning permissions that are relevant to this application. The first one is 24/00550 FUL, which allowed the change of use of number 25, so the building next door, and amalgamation with the Adult Gaming Centre at number 27. along with the conversion of the upper floor space at number 25 to be used as residential class C3 use. And this was granted in 2024. Following this, we had another application which was submitted and sought the removal of condition 6 of planning permission 2400550 FUL. This condition related to opening hours. The application was granted and therefore allowed the use of the ground floor units of 25 and 27 Westgate Street to function as an adult gaming centre 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This application was granted in February and could still be implemented if they wish to, up until 2027. Okay, so just to clarify, both 25 and 27 Westgate Street have existing permissions which allow their use as an adult gaming centre for 24 hours a day. This application seeks to allow 24-hour use for solely 27 Westgate Street as an adult gaming centre. Concerns have been raised regarding the application in terms of noise, antisocial behaviour, and that the proposal goes against the council's aims to encourage city centre living. The application has been considered in terms of all these factors. In regards to noise and disturbance, comments have been received from the council's noise advisors, who have raised no objection to the proposal. The noise report submitted with the application confirms that all internal operational noise would be contained within the building, and noise from people entering and leaving the building would be masked by existing noise sources in the area. The current use has not resulted in high levels of antisocial behaviour, and no noise complaints have been made. Any measures to reduce antisocial behaviour or crime at the premises would need to be considered separately from planning by the council's licensing team and as well as the operational manager for the business. The proposed extended opening hours are not considered to result in unacceptable levels of noise or disturbance and would form part of the mix of uses within Westgate Street. The proposal would allow occupants of nearby residential properties to continue to enjoy the benefits of city centre living without their living amenity being unacceptably impacted. It is therefore considered that the proposal to allow the adult gaming centre to open to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is acceptable, and it is recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have no registered speakers for this item, so we can go straight into question time from members. If I start with Councillor Reader Holden, we'll work our way around. If you can ask one question at a time, be concise, and just stick to acquiring new information about the application.
Thank you, Chair. It's a point of clarification that I want. The logic of the previous planning application that was approved on the 6th of February, that allows both 25 and 27 to be operated 24 hours a day. So if we reject this application today, will they just be able to default back to that one and carry on regardless?
Question.
Yeah, they would be able to implement the previous position in previous applications, and that would be up until 2027 that they could do that.
So what is the point of today's application then?
It's been called to committee by the local councillor on concerns regarding noise and antisocial behaviour, so that's why it's been called to committee.
I understand why it's been called to committee. What I want to know is why has this application been made for specifically for number 27 when they've already got permission for both 25 and 27?
They, at this time, didn't want to implement the whole scheme, so they were just looking at the existing unit that they've got at number 27.
Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Alastair Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. How many complaints have there been from neighbours in the immediate area? Given that there's not much residential there, it'd be interesting to know how many residents have complained.
There's been no noise complaints to do with the existing use.
Sorry, just to clarify my question, with regards to the condition removal, number 7, how many complaints has there been?
I think we've had one objection from a neighbour and then concerns raised from the councillor.
Thank you. I can't see anything in here with regards to the Civic Trust or anything to do with heritage, given that it's in a heritage area. What's that about?
So this application was purely for the removal of condition 6, which related to the condition that related to noise. There was no statutory requirement to consult Conservation or Civic Trust, so there hasn't been any consultation with them.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy?
What's their times opening at the moment, please? I know it's linear, but I just want to know. Sorry, Serena.
So opening times should be up on the screen now. It's 9 a.m. to midnight, Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays, and 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. Sundays and bank holidays.
Am I right in thinking that they're buying next door? I'm a bit confused on all this. Now
So again, you should see on your screen, but the previous planning application was looking to amalgamate the 2 units. So 25 and 27 would function as the adult gaming centre.
Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Looking at the picture of 25 and 27, the next door buildings, so there's offices above, directly above, and what with the next door, I can see Phone Master and something else, I think it's charity shops there. What's above those buildings?
So 20 to 29 Westgate Street, we've had previous approvals to allow the upper floors as a sui generis HMO. I don't know if that's been implemented at the minute. But in terms of noise and disturbance, the noise assessment confirms that there's no noise transfer between the ground floor and the upper floor units within that building. So the same would be the case for the neighbouring buildings as well.
Yeah, thank you. Mine was more to do with the external, which I think you mentioned will be masked by surrounding noise. But yeah, that's about debate. But I just, yeah, there won't be much during like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Councillor Marshall, do you have any questions? Councillor Lewis.
Right. I don't know if this is possibly a licensing one or something like that. I'm not happy with 24 hours gambling, to be perfectly honest. This isn't Vegas, it's Westgate Street. But isn't there some policies that say that excessive gambling is not allowed?
I don't know if that's probably a licensing one or something like that. It's probably not a planning one. That's why I was querying in the question. So that would be go to licensing, not here. Okay.
It would be. I pressed the wrong button. I'll learn. It would be a licensing issue, and they could certainly put hours on it if they wanted to. You're looking at this from a planning perspective, and as your first questioner pointed out, 25 and 27 have already got 24 hours. So from a planning perspective, no. They might look at that, but they wouldn't necessarily look at it in relation to excessive gambling. They'd look at it in relation to the impact it's having on the community on Westgate Street, etc. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Has there been a consultation with Gloucestershire Constabulary? NAPO Policing Team? There has, yeah. Full consultation.
Please.
Yeah.
Councillor Jones? No. Councillor Harris? Councillor Barnier? No. No more questions. Oh, Councillor Stephanie Chambers?
Yeah, it's just a little bit from Andy's question there. So in regards to the policy in the Joint Core Strategy, the SD14 about health and wellbeing, would we be able to make our decision in relation to that policy if we felt the statistics shows that health and wellbeing can be significantly impacted by excessive gambling?
I mean, in theory you could, but it would have to be evidence-based. And one of the difficulties you've got is, and you can see this from the report, there's nothing from the EHO saying that there's been really any complaints about this site at all. It has a low footfall, and there hasn't been anything from any of the others. And even though the police are a bit ambivalent about this, they aren't giving you any evidence of any complaints whatsoever. So the difficulty you would have if you sought to apply that policy is you'd have to do it with evidence. If you didn't, you'd be in considerable difficulty.
Would evidence, I've got a parliamentary paper here on the levels of suicide and gambling, etc. And the fact that maybe there's a low footfall might be because there are other gambling operations open during the day, but during the night that might not be the case, and this could see a significant increase.
Thank you. I'm aware of that because in my other role, I'm a parish priest, and my bishop was one of those who pushed that forward. So I do know a little bit about that. But nevertheless, that would be looking at the situation nationally, and I think it is acknowledged that there is a national gambling concern and a gambling issue. You're obviously looking at this application on its merits as opposed to a health and well-being across the nation.
Councillor Jones?
This is a question related to what Andy was talking about and Stephanie. Linked to health and well-being and gambling, you talked about evidence-based from our monitoring officer. I went to a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference last week and spoke to a charity called Gambling with Lives, and they were talking about the only time they can gather evidence about people who've committed suicide, or other words to describe people taking their own life. It's only when they get the coroner's report, because there's an issue about linking up the data with linking it to gambling, and it's quite difficult to do that connection. So Gambling with Lives, we're trying to get this information out there so people can make informed decisions about people who have actually taken their lives linked to gambling.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Are there any more questions before we go to debate? I think we can go to debate now. Who would like to start? Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, legally there's not a lot we can say about it because they've already got permission already to 2027, so that precedent has been set. On the other hand, so I won't be voting for it, but I won't be voting against, to be perfectly honest, because I just don't like it. Nothing, but I'm not going to vote against the officers because they're doing their job. So I should be just abstaining on this because I just don't agree with it, because I think the health and well-being of the people in Westgate Street or around will be affected by it. But like Councillor Jones said, we won't know until somebody's topped themselves or whatever. So I should be just abstaining on it.
Councillor Marshall. Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. I do have some direct evidence, and it's very sad, but our former MP, Richard Graham, this was some things that I had done with him, and I just checked my notes on it. Now, he dealt with at least 3 cases of suicides within this city of young men down to gambling, and he did a lot of work on it. And then there was the National Gambling Clinics were set up as well. So I definitely, in my own mind, can link the health and well-being of people within this city to excessive gambling. I think I'm not one for restricting anybody's rights. However, there's online gambling people can access 24 hours a day. There's gambling within the city centre. And my concern would be with 24 hours is the health and well-being. If somebody is in the dire straits, they've possibly lost money, they come out onto the streets. There's not many people around at that time of the morning or night, and they'd be on their own. So I have a significant concern in that way. I also think being the only place that's open till 24 hours a day, I believe, in the city, I don't know, but definitely on this street, it might see significant more footfall. And there are residential areas within that area. And the fact that it says the noise externally could be masked by other noise within the area, we're not going to get too much more noise at that time. It depends when they did their noise assessment. If that was done in the day, yes, there would be. But if that was done in the middle of the night, then possibly not. So to my mind, those things, the noise would be affecting the residents on that street already and the health and well-being of people within our city. So I will be going against. I think in my mind, I'm quite sure that that would be satisfactory.
Oh, sorry,
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. So just looking at the UK Gambling Act in 2005, the primary legislation governing betting shops requiring them to obtain a premises licence from the local licensing authority. The legislation aims to protect children and other vulnerable people from gambling harm and to prevent gambling from being a source of crime or disorder. So just looking at that, it does concern me because I looked at when McDonald's closes on Westgate Street and it's 11 p.m. And then what you could have is people hang around by McDonald's and then they go over to the gambling shop because they've got nowhere else to go at night. And also it could also cause problems with policing. So they're overstretched already as it is at the moment. And I don't think it is relevant, or I don't think it's a good idea for the city at the moment, because we're trying to get away with this antisocial situation. We're trying to support the homeless. We're trying to get, make things better. And I don't think that this will improve the city centre, and it could cause an increase in antisocial behaviour. So I'm against this, unfortunately.
Councillor Tracy and then Councillor
I endorse
Weaverhill.
all what you both said, actually, because I have that written down. And a first instance, just to talk it through, I mean, you're not allowed really to drive up that street, so nobody would know who was up that street at that time of the night. Well, you're not supposed to, but they probably do. And the fact is, at that time of the night, you would want to go out gambling, but only those who, like you say, some of the undesirables and some people who are just wandering. And not what I'm worried about is they don't gamble, on my experience down Northgate Street. If they don't gamble and they gamble and they lose all their money, their first instance is to come out and bash a tree or something. But I'm not saying that will happen. And in Westgate Street, we have 3 residential homes, not residentials like, over 50 homes there. And we also have the Cavern, which we have many problems with a cavern on the corner, which they hang around. We always got policing ambulances there as such, but probably needed. But who in their right mind, in a nice way, as like you said earlier on, this is not Las Vegas, Gloucester. It's Las Vegas is USA. And who, you know, who would want to go out at that time, like you struck there with McDonald's? Yeah, they got a half an hour gap there where they can wander over there, spend their money, and what happens? They're on the streets in the morning because I'm out there 2 o'clock. They go to their homes and go back out on the streets at 2. And that's the way they go out around the town. I don't think it's needed there because that is the Westgate Street is the most historic street in Gloucester with a cathedral as well. But that's immaterial, but it's a setting where this place is. And personally, I could not raise my hand to vote for it because, all right, let them keep to 12 o'clock. I mean, who in their right mind will be round at 12 o'clock? And you are perfectly right. It's a policing, it's resources again. I can't see them being busy. And so it's not for Gloucester. We've had so many casinos and that and turned down. And right in the heart where we're trying to do up the Fleece Hotel and what's going up above in the heart of the city, I think they're on a loser if they stayed open all night and they'd be back on the streets where they get picked up by the others and they're back on, you know, drugs and all and everything else like that. So it's for the people of the city. We're building the city up. You know, we've got all the beautiful buildings and the city's coming together. And all right, could have it down somewhere else at the ends of the streets, but not in the heart of the city where we're trying to regenerate it all now. So I'm so sorry I've got to vote against it. As I say, not for me, for this wonderful city of ours, Gloucester. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. Anybody else? Joe.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Anyone? A day. That's the sad reality. But I don't see why we need to encourage it in the centre of the city of Gloucester. So I will be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. I was going to say, it's a difficult one. We want to boost the nighttime economy, but this is not the right choice of business to extend its hours. I would imagine its hours are good as we speak at the moment. You've got a cost of living crisis. These shift workers who maybe work in the nighttime economy at that time, they're working long hours, arduous hours.
Councillor Jones, can I just interrupt? Can the gallery remain silent, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I mean, shift workers are the ones who are going to be out at that time of night. And looking at the evidence there, it talks about people going into the casino by themselves. They've had a long shift. They're vulnerable people. They've worked long, arduous hours, and they're going in there for a bit of fun. And it's going to be challenging to make informed decisions. So it goes back to my original point. It's probably not the best choice of business to extend its hours at that time of night, even though we've got to try and boost the nighttime economy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lewis?
Yeah, I listen to everybody and I totally agree with everybody, to be perfectly honest. It just seems to me we would be pandering to addiction. Now, and we don't want to do that. I wasn't going to vote for it if everybody voted for it, whatever. Right now, along with everybody else, think I'm minded to just vote against it because it's our duty as a council or councillors to protect the public wherever possible. They've got a 24-hour notice and it'll come up to review in 2027. Let's leave it to that and then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Alastair Chambers.
Based on the parliamentary paper, Gambling with Lives, mainly men up to 30, 1 in 5% affected by gambling. There's 496 suicides linked to gambling, 37% increase in mortality, and 46% population deemed vulnerable due to gambling, so nearly 50%. We've been talking about timescales as well. We've been talking about early hours of the night. It's not as early hours of the morning. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, this place would be open. I walked downtown only there the other night at that time, and it was really, really quiet. Couldn't hear anything, tell anyone about. So it's going to really make a lot of noise, flashing lights, noise, and antisocial behaviour. So unfortunate for the applicant, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Yeah, my guess is obviously at that time of night with the noise, you're going to have potentially people that have been in pubs and nightclubs when it comes to kicking out time, thinking, where can we go? And if this is one of the only places that is open, you're going to have people that are highly intoxicated going, ooh, let's go spend some more money in there, keep the party going, lose a lot of money. It's going to be very detrimental to them. But also the noise from, say, outside, I'm not too sure how much that would potentially be an issue. But my main concern is there's going to be a lot of machines in the building that have repetitive, high-pitched kind of sounds that are designed to get your brain focused in on them. Now, those sounds will travel through walls. So I think it was mentioned that one of the buildings next door is to be a HMO. For the residents there to have 24 hours a day, the kind of fruit machine noises going on and on and on is going to be torture for them. So I can't support this at all.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I just come back?
Councillor Tracy.
This establishment, do they serve coffee, drink, food? Please?
We're not taking questions now, just
Oh,
debate.
we're not taking questions, Councillor Tracy.
I know, but
we don't know that.
Well, I'm just saying, perhaps do they have a drink when they go in or something sweet? Well, we're not saying they're going in drunk or anything like that, but if you're out all night, you'd want a sandwich, wouldn't you, or something?
We don't know that. That's conjecture.
Go and have a look.
Anybody else? I've got a point to make. Anybody else, though? I just wanted to pick up what Councillor Harris said about noise, because any noise coming from people leaving the building, I think, will travel upwards, and the residents in the road, I imagine, are living above the shop, so to speak, above retail premises, and I think the sound will have an impact, any sound that is produced by people leaving the premises, and you know that is a planning matter. The other items we discussed really isn't the issue of gambling. I think it's already been decided. It's got permission to function as a gambling location for the time being. But that's the point I want to make. Nobody else wants to add anything.
If they're minded.
If you're minded to overturn this, the Principal Planning Officer will address you.
That way.
You will probably have to vote again.
We go to a vote. We're voting.
She needs to speak first.
Okay. So we're voting on the proposition at the moment. Is there a seconder to vote for this? Nobody wishes to second it. So we go to voting against it?
Yeah, so we'll need
To propose?
we will need a proposer. We'll need a seconder, and then the Principal Planning Officer. I'm happy to propose voting against it.
Councillor Alistair Chambers proposes voting against it, and Councillor Jones seconds.
May I, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So whenever we have an officer
overturn, it's my duty to remind you that any decision you take has to be done in accordance with the legislative framework. So in that case, the framework for England is the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act and the Town and Country Planning Act, which require you to take account of the development plan and any other material considerations. So when we're looking at an officer overturn, it's essential that you provide me with clear planning reasons that you're giving for your decision, and that those reasons are based on evidence. So this is what I will need from you, and that they're capable of being defended. I'd like to draw your attention to the report where we set out in the report that there is no evidence of noise impact from the environmental health officer, the noise report, and no reports from the police that we could use as evidence in this case. I'd also like to remind you that the principle of the use has been established through the previous planning permission, and the principle of the 24-hour opening has already been granted planning permission for this building and the building next to it, although not yet implemented. So if I could have from you the planning reasons and the evidence and justification, then we can take another vote. I think Simon would like to address you also.
Can I also just remind you, because we've said this before, and we'll say it again, planning applications are considered on their merit, not on national health and wellbeing policy. Now, I've heard what Councillor Stephanie Chambers has said, that may well be something that you can frame into that based on that evidence, but a broad brush approach across the nation simply won't be regarded as proper consideration. But you've also got to consider, as Claire's just said to you, that you do have to accept, and that was the first question that was put, has the principle been established for 24-hour opening of this licensed premises, 25 and 27? And the answer is yes. So you're in a very difficult position should this be challenged. I mean, you can keep your fingers crossed and hope that they won't challenge it because they won't want to go to the cost of it and just carry on with the permission they've already got. But, you know, that's not without its risk.
Councillor Wiederhold, you have planning reasons.
I do. This conflicts with proposals for more city centre living in the local plan to improve the city centre. And the proposal resulted in increased risk of antisocial behaviour and crime. And I think those are adequate planning objections.
Can I get the policy number, please?
I was quoting straight from the objection by the local councillor. I don't know what the which policy I should look at.
Looking at 6.17, there was 4 instances of antisocial behaviour last year, and already they've had 2 this year. And I can only see that will be exacerbated when you get an influx of everybody coming in when the pubs are shut. So I would have said on the antisocial behaviour, it's already proven it, and they were kept inside, but I think it's only going to spill out when there's nothing to, when you throw them out or something like that. I think it's going to be a right mess. And I would put those figures in that's from Solace. So I think there is a proven record of antisocial behaviour there.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Hi, yes, I'm quoting from the JCS policy SD14, specifically the one that says, it goes on to say, we should protect and seek to improve environmental quality. Development should not create or exacerbate conditions that could impact on human health or cause health inequality. To my mind, this could cause health inequality. We have people living on the streets as well that maybe go in there to get warm and spend money. They're already at detriment. Health inequalities to do with suicides, which I can quote at least 3 local cases of suicide within this city. And I'm sure there's much more if we contacted one of the local charities. I've been contacted myself by residents that have been in this situation, by a parent that was in dire straits. And I can absolutely state that this person would go anywhere and do anything where it was available to gamble. And it was causing him, and he is now seriously unwell and receiving treatment for that. In relation to noise, I know it states a noise assessment was done, but without knowing the exact timing of that noise assessment, we don't know how that would be impacting at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I do believe, and the business wouldn't be looking to do this if they didn't think it would be increasing footfall during those periods. So there will be an increase in footfall, which is going to exacerbate time. It's not going to be massed at that time of the night, I think, because other things are going to be closed. So that says here in point 2, result in no unacceptable levels of air, noise, water, light, etc., either alone or cumulatively with respect to relevant national and EU limit values. Well, I don't know what those values are, but I could say that would be increased. I think it would be natural to deem that.
Thank you.
Just looking at the report, I think you're safest on your SD14 point. For members, the relevant paragraph is 6.7 in your agenda pack. The difficulty with the earlier ones, and even that one where you're surmising, and that's dangerous to surmise, but with the ones before, they're for plan making, not for decision taking, and you're obviously in decision taking mode. But SD14 would be an appropriate policy. Yeah.
So we're going to vote.
No, I'm
to-
just going to read back the refusal.
The officer will read the refusal.
So the reason for refusal is that the development fails to improve the environmental quality and exacerbates conditions that will impact on human health or cause health inequality, contrary to policy SD14 of the Joint Core Strategy.
Thank you. So that has not been approved.
No, but you still got to get to the vote, Madam Chairman, and you're voting for refusal on this case for that reason.
We now vote for refusing this application. All those in favour of refusing, please raise your hands. Is that unanimous? I believe, yes. So that is refused. Thank you. We now move on to the next item. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Castle. Those people speaking.
Yes. Okay.
I'll go in the members' room.
Right, so I just got to read it. Yeah, right. I'll wait for you. Right, good evening, everyone. We're now going to move on to the second item, which is the number 6 Ermin Hall, Denmark Road. I'm going to ask now the Principal Planning Officer, Adam, to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is an application for the change of use of Ermin Hall on Denmark Road from 84 units of student accommodation as the existing use to 49 units of residential accommodation for supported living. I should report at the outset that we had a site visit for members yesterday, the 6th of October, for familiarisation with the site. This is to be recorded for the minutes. I passed on the details to the committee clerk in accordance with the site visit guidance. So the purpose of that was, as I say, familiarisation with the site and the environs. And the particular things we looked at were parking arrangements on the site and in the vicinity, the access to the site, the amenity space at the rear of the site and the relationships to neighbouring properties, the internal arrangements of the study bedrooms and the communal spaces as existing, and views from the building towards the north and across to the east as well. The reason for needing planning permission in this case is quite nuanced. There's a technical reason, because although the authority has already determined through granting the student halls accommodation 20 or so years ago that this is an acceptable site for a residential type use and an acceptable site for living in clusters, because the student accommodation or the student nature of the accommodation was mentioned in the description of the development, there has to be a new planning application. So that's why we have the application in front of us today. The proposal is to reduce the number of units in there from 84 to 49, as I mentioned. I'll just take you through some plans and some photographs, which should hopefully help familiarise everyone, particularly those who weren't able to attend yesterday. So I'm afraid the laser pointer I don't think is working at the moment, so I'll try and describe as best I can. So the site edged red there is the existing student accommodation on the north side of Denmark Road. Largely you have residential properties surrounding. In the to the east of the site is the new development that's mentioned several times through the public representations variously, I think as Gleveham Green and as the Redrow estate. That's a fairly new estate. You've also got residential properties to the north that front onto Kingsholm Road, and to the left in that shorter terrace that front onto Denmark Road, and the properties to the south. Moving on, that is obviously the equivalent aerial shot. You can see the proposed building in that L shape broadly in the centre of the picture there. Obviously the aerial image is out of date in relation to the houses on the right side of that slide. They are all there now. This is the existing layout on the ground floor. Hopefully you can make out that it's an arrangement of clusters of study bedrooms, sort of 5, 6, 7 cluster bedrooms with a shared kitchen facility in various arrangements. And then they're pretty similar all the way up through the building until you get to the roof level accommodation in the western wing. So that's the first floor, that's the second and the third. So you can see there that in the east wing, that's up at 4 full stories. In the west wing, that accommodation is in the roof space, so you can make out the roof lights there, and a slightly different arrangement, obviously elongated with the limited head height in that roof space. The proposed plans are in the west building for 35 cluster bedrooms in a broadly similar arrangement to what it is now, but there are a few key changes to note. So if you look at the green shaded areas, that is use of an existing cluster kitchen, which also extends into the adjacent and uses the floor space of the adjacent studio bedroom. So in each case, that you'll notice this is quite similar further up through the building. And then also to note in the sort of pinky purple shading, you've got a building regulations M42 accessible bedroom proposed twice. In the sort of orangey colour, over to the right side of the slide, there's an M43 wheelchair accessible flat proposed. And then the blue coloured areas are the office as labelled on the left, and then the L shape on the bottom right is proposed as the sort of shared area that's mentioned in my report and in one of the conditions to be that are recommended for that to be delivered. So moving up, first floor again, you can see the green are the shared kitchen areas extending into one of the bedrooms. So instead of clusters of 6, you've got clusters of 5 plus a bigger kitchen sitting room in effect. And then on the right hand side, a mix of studios and 1-bed flats. Very similar on the second floor and similar on the third floor as well. The next set of slides to familiarise you from some photos. So the building in question is basically in the middle behind that large tree. You can just see the side of it sticking out to the left. So the adjacent neighbour is the white house that's just behind that red traffic sign. A bit further in, obviously, pretty much the same view, but closer in. The property in question is there with the brick, and then the rendered section further to the right and the projecting bays. Further along, seeing the width of it, hopefully, as I can't point, I'm afraid, you can see over to the right-hand side of the slide, you can just see a sort of area that's in a bit of shadow where the fence has stopped. That's the vehicular access and the pedestrian access to get into the 2 wings of the building. Looking at it from the other direction, that's a bit clearer there. So this is coming through that Undercroft area at the position of the vehicle access. So this is looking northwards. So the building is sort of to either side of me there. And that's the parking area at the rear of the site. So that tree-lined edge of the site is the boundary to the neighbouring gardens on the north side. That's just turning the corner slightly to see the parking area there. So the new development is beyond that vegetation there. You can just see one of the houses at the top right creeping into view, the roof there. This is turning in that same area and looking towards the back of the Kingsholm Road properties. So beyond that brick wall that's behind the left-hand seat, that's another residential garden. This is that same area, but giving a different perspective from above. This is looking back towards the building, so that boundary to the Kingsholm Road properties I mentioned straight in front. That's the east taller wing of the building. That's the west wing. You can just about make out the roof lights in the upper floor of that wing there. This is coming back towards the building, and we can see some existing structures. So that's the existing bin store, the sort of fenced-in compound. Behind that, there's a freestanding outbuilding that I understand was used for washing machines and the like. So that's an option for residents to, or for the YMCA to use that similarly for washing and drying, perhaps. This is moving along further to the west of the site, the existing cycle store, and then you can see the Kingsholm Road properties in brick in the background. That gives you a better perspective of what we were just looking at. You can just about see on the sort of middle left of the photograph, you can see the cycle store. This is a typical existing study bedroom. They're very much a sort of potato print of the same design all the way through the building, apart from the ones that are adapted for disabled purposes. This is looking from the upper floors within the west building towards the Kingsholm Road properties, further along the garden to the east, and again further round, and you can see the new development in the middle background. Looking again backwards towards Kingsholm Road properties, but from the east wing. So this is back down on the ground. That's the boundary to the Kingsholm Road properties garden. And then again, I'm going to sort of move round east to west broadly. So that's the tree line that we saw at the back of the site with the fence in the background, moving round to that brick wall to the garden, moving round to the rear face of the existing part of the Kingsholm Road property right at the boundary, and then looking in towards the remainder of the amenity space, again with the Kingsholm Road property in the background. This is the adjacent property, 52 Denmark Road, I think that is the white one, which is the adjacent neighbour that we saw earlier. And then this is background on Kingsholm Road, looking back in at the development. So that white property that's in the middle is number 52. The application site is the building beyond that with the, you can see the pitched roof there and the windows facing to the rear. That's at the boundary within the site. So the existing building is immediately on the left of the photograph. 52 is beyond that fence, and that's just turning and looking back at what windows were there. So those windows are facing northwards, not back towards number 52. So this is moving back out to the east side of the site. So that's the existing property on the left-hand side of the photograph. That's the new development on the right. I think that's Wadley Close there. Again, moving round slightly northwards, application property in the middle. There's the new development's access road there. So this property with the sort of diamond brick detail is the one that immediately abuts the property or the amenity space and parking area of the property beyond that rear garden. And again, moving up the street there. This is the immediate area to the side of the existing property. This is looking down to get a perspective of the relationship between the new properties on the right and the rear space of the existing building, and again cranking round to look out to the window to that window to the right, further round in the east facing windows of that, and that's the bottom of Wadley Close where I was stood in the photograph several back. That is the rear east boundary to the properties in the new development. You can't see that terrifically well because it's quite dense vegetation there, but that's a close bordered fence at the back of those properties. This is looking, sorry, I probably should have put this slide a few earlier. This is looking out of the rear window in the west wing towards the Kingsholm Road property. That's the view, obviously, with those trees in the way that we saw earlier. This is now moving on to some photos of neighbouring roads. So Wadley Close further up, Wadley Close again looking back down and up the road. This is Denmark Road. So the application property is right in the middle, just to the right-hand side of that tree. This is about 3:30, 3:45 on a weekday. Moving back up Denmark Road westwards towards the site. That's the frontage of the site. Note that there's a sort of hatched off parking zone in front that's in the parking permit zone. I'll share a slide in a moment of that so you can familiarise yourself a bit better, hopefully. And that's turning and looking in the opposite direction, so application site on the left. And the same right back towards the Kingsholm Road junction. That's the parking permit arrangement in the area, so there's an ability to park short term, but generally you need a parking permit in Zone J. But this is hopefully useful to understand some of what crops up in the public representations about the new development happening to be outside the parking permit zone. So the red outline is Zone J, and you can see the sort of squarish wedge at the top, the inset section. You can see it says Wadley Close there and Hudson Close. That's the new development. So the application site is immediately to the left of the bottom right corner, if you like, of that inset section. So zoomed in a bit, if you go to the bottom left corner of that red dashed line, that's the application site. So immediately in front to the south on Denmark Road, you're in the parking permit zone. Immediately sort of north and east, you're outside of it. And just to mention while we're on the topic of the parking, so there's a few key points that hopefully came through in the report that are particular to this applicant and to the type of use. So from the applicant's information, they've indicated that their other sites have particularly low car ownership among residents. They propose that they would be a business use and therefore under the way that they would qualify for permits in the county parking guide, they would have an entitlement to 2 permits. And the county council has, parking team has indicated that that permit scheme is undersubscribed at the moment, but they were keen to point out the slight anomaly in the area of the Zone J parking area. So some other things to mention briefly. This is all in the report, but just to kind of hopefully tell the story a little bit of how officers got to their recommendations. So the nature of the proposal is quite nuanced due to the applicant in question. So the YMCA as an organisation run under a 4-stage pathway programme, and they have said that the site would not be used for entry-level or emergency accommodation. Residents would be people the YMCA has already worked with, who are already in Gloucester and with a local connection to Gloucester. Tenants would have evidence that they were ready to progress to what both our housing team and the applicant terms a sort of move on a type of accommodation. And that involves a tapering off of the level of support that they receive until they're ready to move on. The YMCA support would be a member of staff on site at all times, including what they term waking staff overnight. They've confirmed that they do not operate hostels. They have confirmed that they risk assess tenants first, and they do not accept individuals with arson convictions, any persons on the sex offenders register, or who have recently committed violent crime. And the selection of occupants would be jointly between the YMCA and the council's housing team. So there are clearly some particular circumstances, including the de-intensification of the use from 84 to 49 bed spaces in there. And so in officers' view, that this sort of later stage pathway destination scheme, as they call it, is much more akin to living in more independently as they progress through that pathway, and more either like students in the cluster model or in a flatted type arrangement. So it's a particular type of accommodation, but the particular way in which the applicant would select and manage and accept and vet potential tenants is key, we feel, to the planning assessment. You'll have seen that the council's housing strategy team recommends the application is approved and sets out a need for the development, but clearly there's a lot of concern locally. We've had nearly 70 objections, and so it is a challenging application to balance up the respective competing interests here. Officers feel that a need for the development to address homelessness is identified, and that's a matter in the public interest. It has strong support from the housing team, but equally, we've acknowledged the concern and the fear in the local community, which have been strongly expressed. So where we've arrived at as officers is that the analysis we've undertaken points to a personal permission, and that's not something that the council will often do, and is generally dissuaded, because the use will normally, or will always, run with the land, and the approach is generally that, well, if it's the same use from person A to person B, what would be the point in limiting it to person A? But in this case, we feel that there is a clear planning justification to go with recommending a condition for a personal permission. And you'll have seen that there are several other specific conditions in there that we've recommended to try and establish that particular use that comes through in their description, but becomes a little bit difficult to pin down unless you've got a condition describing it. The council has an adopted policy on considering specialist housing, which is policy A5 in the recent city plan. Officers consider that the application shows compliance with the criteria, and in terms of concentration, we don't feel that there's any clear evidence of an over-concentration of those uses, and we have taken a very precautionary approach to those uses. So I've gone through, as you'll have seen in the report, several ways of trying to figure out where those uses are. I've had some more suggested to me over the last day or two, but they don't change the fundamental conclusions. Hopefully this is a useful map to show some of that. So in one of the other council, the city plan policies, there is a policy about HMOs, and that looks at over-concentration and defines a level of 10% of properties in 100 metres as a point at which the character of an area starts to change. And we've identified that at its most generous in terms of proximity, there are 2 of those uses within 100 metres. There's 50 plus properties in that area, and so it isn't breaching a 10% threshold. There's another use that is around about 105 metres away, but even if you've got the 3 properties out of the 50, we're not breaching a 10% threshold. And then there aren't any others until around about 400 metres plus. So you've got the bulk of those uses, and quite a few have been identified. The bulk of those uses are in the sort of purpley colour on that slide. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Adam. We're going to move on to public speaking section now. So note each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the committee, and we will offer a 1-minute warning. So the first speaker will be the ward councillor, which is Councillor Jeremy Hilton. Would you like the 1-minute warning, Jeremy? Sure. You will. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. This building has obviously been used for over 20 years as student accommodation. It was specially built for student accommodation. But I do know that both the University of Gloucestershire and the Hartpury College do not require this accommodation. They have more than enough accommodation in the city for their first-year students. So we have a problem, is that the building is empty. The city also does need move-on accommodation. We've got people that come in who are homeless that are waiting to move on to where they can be more independent. So we do need accommodation of this nature. We also know that the Cheltenham YMCA is a reputable housing provider. They actually do manage some properties in Kingsholm and Wotton, where we've got houses that we own. I do know that local residents are concerned about the change of use. It's a change of use from young students to persons who were previously homeless, and there's a possible increase in antisocial behaviour, and that's a major concern. However, we are told that all the people that would move in would be risk assessed. We've got it in writing now that there won't be any convicted arsonists, sex offenders, or those involved with violent crime. And that what we're looking at is people that have been in stage 1 and stage 2 accommodation with the YMCA. So they will know the individuals personally. And we also know that all the people that will be living there will have a connection to the city of Gloucester. So there might well be people that lived in Gloucester or worked here, whatever it is. What we do know is that, and it's said in the report, that this won't be a migrant hospital. And I think that is, if you look at the objections, quite a number of the people are concerned about it becoming a migrant hospital, and the YMCA have made that quite clear that it would not be. And we also know that it will be staffed 24/7, and that they will be wide awake between 10 o'clock at night and 8:30 in the morning. I assume they'll be wide awake 24/7. And it's confirmed now that it's 49 persons, not 84. When I wrote my original letter and asked for this to go to committee, I was concerned when you looked at the layout of the building, there was no plans for conversion, and I was concerned that it could have been just used for 89 units, beds, sort of bed sits. That's gone down to 49, 35 in cluster rooms, and also an internal refit for 14 one-bed flats, which I understood was the original plan from the YMCA. And that we also now got confirmed, it's another concern of mine, is that there will only be 2 residence parking permits eligible, because they're only going to have 1 address there, and that means that's the limit. We do know that there's a problem of parking on the Gleven Green estate. I don't think the roads have been adopted yet, and that's one of the problems of not having them included in the Zone J scheme. However, the County Council is at the moment going through a review of the parking scheme, and we'll see whether we can get that one sorted. There's going to be quite clearly high level of security at the building, CCTV cameras and everything. And we've heard about the times when the police have arrived at YMCA buildings, it's usually an internal dispute between tenants inside. It's not something that comes out on the street. I'm hoping that it won't. I mean, I know, for example, I've had to deal with students causing problems in the past, so I've had complaints from residents there. I'm still concerned about the immediate neighbours and making sure that the YMCA ensures that those sitting outside don't start having ghetto blasters and music and disturbing the immediate neighbours. I'm sure they'll manage that, to say that if you're going to sit outside, you sit outside quietly, you don't have a party. The issue is, if it's not the YMCA, then who else would take this building over? It does look like something that would be immediately the right sort of building for a migrant hostel. Yeah, if you look at that, I mean, that was one of the fears of a lot of residents. But if you look at the building itself, who would take it on in the way it's laid out at the moment? That's a concern. And clearly, both universities do not want the accommodation. No, they've told me that personally. So it's a dilemma, Chair. It's a dilemma. I've finished.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. I'm now going to ask Jodie Gooding to address the committee. Would you like the 1 minute warning? This is a person who is against the proposal.
After spending time reviewing the application and looking at various documents online, I was taken aback by the number of incidents associated with YMCA housing across England. Within 10 minutes, I discovered over 30 articles that reported issues, multiple murders, knife attacks, serious bodily harm, and residents causing fires. An excerpt from the police comments on the application, which I believe the planning officers overlooked, states, in the last 5 years, there has been a significant number of calls to the police from each of the CYMCA properties. To effectively support vulnerable adults in care settings, it is crucial to focus on smaller, more individualised units rather than large communal environments. This strategy encourages personalised care, enhances opportunities for meaningful interactions and cultivates a strong sense of community and belonging, all of which lead to improved outcomes and a better quality of life. I have spoken with mental health professionals who have worked with Cheltenham YMCA and similar organisations, and they stress that best practice involves smaller units. If you check the YMCA website, there's a section that discusses positive move-ons. Their smaller units, St Michael's, Caradus and Jubilee, have an 82, 86, 94% positive move-ons. Their larger units, similar sizes to Ermin Hall, Victoria Walk and Potter's Place, has only 50 and 59% positive move-ons. The information I reference, which can be found on the Cheltenham YMCA website, supports this theory, suggesting that smaller units facilities are considerably more effective in aiding young vulnerable adults. The internal and external amenity space on the premises was never intended for individuals to potentially reside in the accommodation around the clock. It was designed for students who attend lectures, socialise, play sport and return to their family homes for nearly half the year. Given the minimal outdoor amenity space, the grassy area across from Ermin Hall has the potential to develop into a larger version of the Rose Garden at the end of London Road, which had faced years of antisocial behaviour. The local park, located 300 metres away, had significant issues with drug users. My young family and I spend time after school there and have encountered problems with needles being left behind and drug users hiding in the bushes. Increasing number of vulnerable individuals in this area will only worsen the situation. A quote from the mental health nurse I find particularly striking is, "A large unit housing for vulnerable adults creates an institution, not a community." My young family and I often walk back from the city centre to our home on Denmark Road and find ourselves contemplating which route to take. Should we navigate the lower end of London Road where drug and alcohol users congregate, or should we opt for the Kingsholm Road near the P3 housing where antisocial behaviour often spills onto the streets? This is intimidating and unfair to local residents. I acknowledge that these residences are intended to be free from alcohol and drugs, which is commendable. However, the unfortunate reality is that residents struggling with addiction frequently turn to consuming alcohol and drugs in the nearby area. Could we face another situation like Dorchester House, which previously housed vulnerable adults on Denmark Road and was closed in recent years due to a significant number of fatalities, over 8 deaths in 1 year? It became clear that accommodating such a large number of vulnerable individuals was harmful to their well-being and raised numerous safeguarding issues. Kingsholm has a high concentration of HMOs, many of which house vulnerable adults. A significant influx of vulnerable individuals will impact local residents who are primarily young families and the elderly. The quality of life for residents should not be compromised by an increase in social behaviour. Victoria Walk in Cheltenham has faced numerous antisocial issues in the surrounding area. One line in the report which raises my concern, 1.6, CYMCA will not accept individuals with arson convictions, those on the sex offenders register, or those who have recently committed violent crimes. So does this not guarantee that residents will not be ex-convicts? Additionally, how does CYMCA define the word recent in relation to violent crimes? So this doesn't rule out residents with a history of violent attacks. This is extremely concerning. 6.35 indicates the intention to it to be a step 3 and 4 on the pathway. What if CYMC implements a strategic change in their plan and their business model? Ermin Hall is situated close to a girls' school and a primary school. Students travel past Ermin Hall on the way to the bus stop in Kingsholm to the school. With a considerable influx of vulnerable and troubled young girls, this could pose potential safeguarding issues. I am perplexed by the following, 6.26. It mentions that both units do not require this building. Why has Gloucester Council not conducted their due diligence in previous years, permitting the university to establish other halls of residence? Surely modernising Ermin Hall would have been a sensible option. I'm aware of several developers actively purchasing good family homes in Kingsholm to convert them into students, which in turn is driving families out to the rental market. Why not encourage the university to develop Ermin Hall, appealing to second and third year students like a lot of the major cities in the country are now doing? Parking has been a long-standing issue in the area. I noticed a comment from the applicant stating that residents will not have cars, but staff visiting family members and health practitioners will, which will place additional strain on the local area. I support the work the YMC does both nationally and internationally, but I do not support housing of this magnitude. I urge the committee to firm oppose a change of use. Sorry, I don't normally speak like that, but that was, oh, jeez. That was right.
Right, I'm now going to ask for Joseph Main from the YMCA, if you would like to take the seat. Would you like to have a 1-minute warning? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, and I'd like to express our sincere thanks to the committee for allowing me to attend and present on behalf of YMCA in support of our change of use planning application for Erman Hall, which, as we have heard, now the university has left and is essentially an empty, vacant building, which I'd like to say is owned by people outside of the area and with no interest in the area whatsoever. I'd like to start by giving a brief introduction by way of explaining our aspirations for Erman Hall and our approach to supported housing, which underpins the reason and purpose for our interest in this development. We are a registered housing provider, meaning that we are heavily regulated and subject to the regulator of social housing. Today we have 112 employees, an annual turnover of 4.5 million. We have assets of 17.3 million, and we have a broad and rich portfolio of services delivering affordable and supported housing, providing support services to children and families. We offer practical health and well-being to communities, early years education, and we provide a number of services responding to poverty and social exclusion. There's no longer a Gloucester YMCA, and this hasn't been since April 2015. Since then, however, we have invested just over £6.6 million in Gloucester for accommodation for the people of Gloucester. And I can, for the purposes of this committee and process, give assurances that all funds are in place to proceed with the purchase and development of Erman Hall. And indeed, as a consequence of that, Erman Hall will increase the level of investment we have brought into Gloucester and in the support of the people of this city to over £13 million. We currently ensure the provision of 154 spaces of accommodation in the city. 95 of these are owned and operated by ourselves, and 59 are owned by Gloucester City Council, but managed by ourselves. We have developed a singular model for supported housing, which we are proud to say we launched first in Gloucester, designed to be entirely person-centred, flexible in approach, fully measurable and focused entirely on moving people away from the spectre of homelessness and into a place of personal resilience where they can contribute to society and hold down their own tenancy in their own right. We call this Pathway Home, and the model has been included in the planning documentation that you have. We've been running Pathway Home since November 2022, and the outcomes do speak for themselves, with 85% of participants moving on positively and a 0.5% tenancy failure rate of known people who have graduated from the scheme. It is our aspiration then to bring this success, along with our expertise, our breadth of services and track record, to Erman Hall. Because of the nature of the work we will have already completed with the residents who will be considered for Erman and our approach to community integration, we believe we will actually be making a net positive contribution to the area. How will we do this? Firstly, and most importantly for those who live in the area, we will be operating transparently and openly with the local neighbourhood, meeting with them regularly and responding to any and all concerns. By providing a staff team 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and reducing the number of beds from 84 to 49, we will ensure that this scheme is well managed and will not feel overwhelming to the neighbourhood. Further, I wish to categorically confirm that my organisation agrees in full to all conditions set out in the planning documentation. And in so saying, and I'd like to say this for the record, we commit to submitting the following: an itemised strategy for dealing with antisocial behaviour associated with residents of the development, a resident code of conduct linked to identified consequences and details of its implementation and mechanism, details of staff supervisory presence at the site at all times, noise management measures for residents and details of their implementation and mechanism, a commitment to resident liaison and details of the methodology for this, a liaison strategy for engaging with police services and details of the methodology for this also. And we will provide written details of the move-on accommodation eligibility criteria for residents of the development and record-keeping measures to store the conclusions of the assessment for each resident. We also, as an organisation, firmly commit to all of the conditions set out as follows: starting the work within 3 years, the conversion to be carried out as Scheme 8 in the drawings, limited to 49 bed spaces, never changing its use to something else, because we can't, because we're using Homes England funding, and internal space for residents used by the end of December 2026 or earlier. Thank you.
We're now going to move to members' questions, and I ask that they ensure that the questions are pertinent to the application to save any debate for the members' debate later on. Any questions? Alistair, and then Pam, is that okay? He quickly popped in before you, Pam, sorry. That's okay. Okay.
You go first?
Yeah, I was concerned about over-intensification of the site. Paragraph of National Planning Policy, paragraph 130F, says ensuring developments create safe, inclusive, healthy spaces. The outside residential area, would you deem that's enough space for, was it 49 residents? Being supported living, I would have thought they need a bit more open space.
Sorry, is it a question? Could you clarify the question?
Can you clarify the question, please?
Yeah, obviously, given that the nature of the supported living is complex needs for residents and behavioural risks, would you deem that the space outside is secure and safe enough for the well-being of the residents, not the neighbours, the residents?
Adam, would you like to?
So the way that officers have approached this is an existing building. So as several people have said, it wasn't necessarily designed with the currently proposed use in mind. Nevertheless, it has been used for 20 or so years by the 84 students in there, accepting, that there are particular characteristics, if you like, of that living style. They will be at lectures, won't they, for a substantial part of the time. They'll probably be away from the site during non-term time. So, we do accept that there are particular aspects in that regard. The applicant has obviously a lot of experience in delivering this type of product and has clearly deemed the associated amenity space to be sufficient. They also offer, I understand it, access to the YMCA's own sporting and recreational facilities elsewhere nearby. And we've also discussed with the applicant the delivery and the use of the L-shaped room at ground floor in the southeast edge of the ground floor as a sort of social space for residents, because we were trying to explore with them that very question of, typically what do residents do? How do they socialise? Where do they socialise? And how we understand the YMCA tends to operate is that they like to offer up that sort of space to the residents. So if the residents, as a group say, well, we'd like to have a gym in there, there might be a gym use in there. If they would like it to be a meeting space, it might be a meeting space. And so I guess the view we've taken is that in light of all of those aspects, the fewer residents at the site, the access to other accommodation, the fact that there is some amenity space, the proposal to enlarge each existing shared kitchen space by another room, a study room for each cluster in that area. And in terms of the east side of the building, those are much like flats really, which of course don't always have amenity space with them in a lot of schemes. We felt that on balance there was not a significant planning reason to refuse on the grounds of a low or poor, insufficient living space. That's about the best way I can answer that.
No, one at a time first, Pam. Yours.
Right, I'm so pleased I went on the site visit. I mean, I know that house for many years, and I'm going to call it a house home. But I was so pleased that we went on the planning with the planning team for the site visit, because it really did open my eyes. And I'm going to get to the question. And when I went in there, I didn't realise there was two halves of the building, which I thought it was one build. And it was very well laid out. So my question is, what's just been from Councillor Chambers, the reason is that I'm right in saying going from 89 to 49, and that, so if they go to 49, so the spaces we saw in those homes, would it be like double the single rooms into one room first?
Okay, Adam, yeah.
So these are probably the best slides to pause on there. So the answer to your question, I think, is probably a bit of yes and a bit of no. So in the west wing, so on the left-hand side of that slide, the green shaded areas are the cluster kitchens. So the one on the left, we actually went into yesterday, you might recall, but further up. And so on that slide, the next cluster study bedroom would be included in that shared communal space. So the existing communal kitchen is getting bigger by one study room's worth of floor space. Okay, and then you've got in the purple, you've got what you hypothesized about, which is two going into one, because I think what you can see there is the label says 4 cluster bedrooms. So you've got 2 existing study bedrooms at the top, one more in the bottom right of that cluster, so that's 3, and then the 4th one would be the purple one, which is 2 rooms. So that I think is what you were suggesting might be the case. So that one is probably because that's a building regs M42 accessible room. So that has the extra floor space to accommodate that. And that's pretty similar on the right-hand side of that wing and then all the way up. On the east wing, there's a much wider expansion of the rooms that we went in. So that orange one there is bigger again as an M43 wheelchair flat. So that's the equivalent of, I can just about make it out, I hope everyone else can on the screen. That's the equivalent of 3 study bedrooms and 1 communal kitchen.
How many disabled rooms? How many disabled rooms would there be?
So there'd be 1 to an M43 wheelchair standard. Yeah. That's the orange one. And then 2 to the M42 accessible and adaptable standard, which is the 2 purpley pink ones. And then the blue is the associated office space and communal space. And then as we go upwards, we've got a similar arrangement to what I was just describing, but obviously the ones on the right are various combinations of flats. So again, to use your suggestion of, are they knocking multiple flats into one, multiple study bedrooms into one flat? On the right-hand side there, yes, they are. So the blue ones are 3 study bedrooms into one, and the orangey ones are 2 study bedrooms plus a communal kitchen into one. So there's a bit of chopping and changing between the uses. So there is some combining, there's some staying the same, and there's some expansion of the communal spaces.
Thank you. So what we saw on site visit yesterday gives me a different light because it shows it's going to be completely different when you walk through that door. And obviously the people on the disabled side, we're going to make sure this goes ahead. That the door, when I can think when we were talking next to the bypass, we would need larger door frame there, like a nice entrance going in, because that would not take a wheelchair. Am I right thinking that?
Do you mean as you enter the building?
Yeah, yeah. So that would be all when it gets not. That would be a wheelchair.
Yes, that's right. So,
All I can say is bike.
so I imagine they may have to, you know, widen doorways or whatever when it comes to building regulations. If to meet that standard, yes, they might have to, you know, ramp a step or widen something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know I don't carry on with this, because I'm going to talk differently. I just want to just get this building in my head a minute. And if this did go ahead, the toilets were quite small. And I would like to say this in many planning, could we have 16 inches toilets put in? Because you're just sitting on small toilets, and they're big, large people who go in these into these rooms. They need a 6-inch, because I had one actually. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah, 16-inch toilets in there, because am I right in thinking it's just men, or would be men, women? Well, we're both now, aren't we? Am I right in thinking that? It'd be unisex, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It'd be unisex toilet. Well, all units have got their own toilets. They've all got their own. Yeah.
The building, it's the landscape. Sorry. All right then, well, I just get my 2 pennies in. I'll come back.
Councillor Weedhill, would you?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Good. We have been reassured that the conditions are acceptable, but do we have any way of enforcing those conditions in the future? If, for example, people who are not associated with Gloucester are moved into the place. At the moment, the conditions say that everyone is associated with Gloucester somehow. If the pathway changes, do we have any way of enforcing anything in these conditions?
Yeah.
So I don't think that the Gloucester connection is part of the condition requirement, although it may come through under some of the submissions that the applicant would make, for example, the last bullet point in condition 6. But that Gloucester connection, I think, is more attributable to what our housing colleagues do. So if they have a referral, and please appreciate this is getting well outside my expertise, but having sat next to people and talked to them generally about how this works, that connection to Gloucester is part of what they go through at the early stage of entering into this pathway. Do they have a Gloucester connection? So I think to some degree that would be covered by other legislation with what the housing team would do, vetting homeless applicants on the way into the system. In terms of enforceability generally, the answer is yes. So conditions, or one of the tests of conditions is whether it's enforceable. And so we feel as officers that they are enforceable, or we wouldn't be putting those forward. And in fact, the council's enforcement team does look at breach of conditions, as we would call it, as an enforcement matter from time to time. So they would look at things like, you know, someone's put up a structure in their back garden, someone's building a new house, but they would also look at, there's a condition on this planning permission that says you must not do thing X, and they're reporting that they're doing thing X, and that would be an enforcement complaint. So yes, the matters set out in the conditions could be enforced by the local planning authority.
Can I just come briefly? You're gonna have I've never known that.
No.
But if I might just come in briefly on your point about the Gloucester connection, yes, it can be enforced, but the question you have to go back to ask is, to what extent is that actually a planning requirement? It almost certainly is a grant funding requirement. And if they are getting money from Homes England, they will enforce that quite rigorously if there's any risk of it going outside of the Gloucester city envelope. So I think your assurance is there, but it's not a planning consideration. Therefore, it's not really appropriate for conditions to resolve that through. I hope that helps.
Councillor Harris.
The grassed area between the proposed development and Wadley Close, and also the grassed area in between the two roads, are they city council property or all of those? Because I note that on the kind of grassy Longdale Island area, there's one wooden bench, and then we've also got one waste bin on there. Is there any contribution from the applicant towards potentially putting in place some more bins and benches on that space, because the residents, likely previously it being students, they're going to be at university during the day. A lot of these residents during the day might not have places to go, so for them to be able to get out and get fresh air, I think a condition of some kind of contribution towards improving the area would be appropriate.
So I think there's two parts to that. So the grassed areas, the honest answer is I don't know. I expect that the verge in the middle, my guess would be that that is part of the adopted highway and so would be county council, but I don't know that for sure.
Can I just go, that's actually city council land, there's a big sign in there, no parking on it because it's city council land.
Okay. The area to the east side, I don't know. Looking at the size of it and the comment earlier that they didn't think that the roads had been adopted, I imagine it's either not adopted either, as well as the roads, or it would probably be a management company area because it's quite small, it seems to me, for the council to take on. And the council's been moving away from adopting public open space as well, so it might have fallen into that category. So that would be my estimation. In terms of a contribution to have more bins and facilities, it's not something that officers felt was necessary as a contribution. I suppose members of the committee would be open to saying we think that that is necessary and that has to be something that would happen for us to grant planning permission. I would urge a note of caution about that, much like the solicitor was mentioning on the previous case about what is the justification for those sorts of things. So it is open now to members to make a decision as they see fit. We didn't feel that it was a necessary planning obligation. There's probably not much more I can add to that.
Any other before part? Oh, Councillor Chambers, Stephanie Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I have two quite quick questions. One is in regard to, this isn't single sex, is it? It is multi-use, there's no restriction on sex, so it could be men and women. Is that correct? Yeah. The other one, I've lost it now. Where has it gone? Yep, it's gone. I'll let Pam know if I find it. Yeah, you can back on.
I understand from the YMCA that it would be single people, but it could be people of either sex, and they've suggested it tends to be about equal men and women in their experience, but you know that wouldn't be controlled through the planning system. They may have their own management strategies for how they like to manage that, but not as part of the planning application.
My question is who am I right in thinking, as we talked yesterday, obviously the people who would be moving into Ermine House would be vetted before because they've already done a stage with YMCA. And am I right in thinking then they're allocated through that stage 1, 2, 3, then they go 4, 5, 6 into that building, hopefully then to move on? That's the idea. Am I right in thinking that? Not as a resident permanent dwelling.
Pam?
Broadcast otherwise. Yes, that is, as I understand it, yes.
That if this goes ahead, that then they would be then nurtured to find a job and carry on and do independent living. So that would be like stage 3 as such. I want another, yeah? You already told me that, but I'm asking it here, yeah. You explained it really well yesterday, actually.
Yes, again, that is, as I understand it, the applicant. So again, you'll appreciate that this is a matter that is related to this particular applicant. If we just had an application for this type of use, you know, without considering the applicant, that sort of issue would not be relevant because we would have no information about the particular organisational pathway that this applicant proposes. In terms of the jobs, again, what I understand from the YMCA is that, yes, they do offer them routes into employment and encourage that. The pathway, I actually noted down from one of their slides. So it's 4 stages. They call them, number 1 is gateway, 2 is medium support, 3 is low support, 4 is qualified independence. So I think, again, your understanding of it is as mine. That's the pathway through.
Well, I'll see the YMCA. Can I ask another question now on vegetation? I was appalled when I walked around with you guys, and I think we all came under the same umbrella. The vegetation around there would have to be, am I right in thinking, that would be done with the coming under planning, like the landscape of all the trees being cut down? You know, all the bushes, what was around the car park, and I mean, you witnessed that, didn't you? Because the right-hand side block, I mean, that was just covered in trees and everything, and the damp coming through those walls was undesirable. So hopefully that, if this did go ahead, and that would give more light and make people more happier.
So again, I can only report what I've been advised by the applicant, and that is that we know this, we know that they don't own it, but they have made the point that they don't own it, so they can't do anything about that now or in the recent past as it's become overgrown. But they did say that if they're able to proceed, all of the areas around Ermine Hall, hard and soft landscaping, would be tidied, particularly to the amenity area and all areas to the rear of the buildings. And they've said that the YMCA pride themselves on their properties being well presented and well maintained. In addition, in relation to the Secured by Design Gold Award requirements that they're looking at, there would also be a need for new defensive planting at the rear boundaries. That's another matter we spoke about briefly on site. We pointed out on site, didn't we? And so they referred to that as potentially like thorny bushes and shrubs, as well as to secure the treatments at these boundaries. There would also be new CCTV systems installed, which obviously wouldn't intrude on the neighbours' privacy, they mentioned. And they proposed that that would be part of what they'd offer under Condition 8, as has been proposed. In terms of where we would normally ask for landscaping plans, that would typically be for a new development. So if this was an empty site and there was a landscaped area, we might typically ask for details of planting. But after that, unless the council is adopting it, once they're past the usual 5-year maintenance requirement in the condition, it's up to owners to keep their, vegetation in good order. Yeah. Here, that's already established. Sorry, is the point I'm trying to make. It's just overgrown.
Because if I was an architect and if I was going to buy that building, if I put people in, I wouldn't want a huge tree outside my window brushing against it in the winds and everything. So all that got to be sorted out. Because this is a vital planning for a big building, especially in the centre of the town, which was a Roman road going all the way up to Brockworth. So we've got to get it right. And if we got to vote on it, because it has turned me around on that one. But I'll come into that on debate. And I'm not going to let the highways out of it, because he's been sat there quietly doing nothing in a nice way. Right, highways. So,
you just wait and
well, I might as well just finish off, mightn't I, then? Go on, then. Yeah, not a problem, because I'm glad we're getting a debate going. Well done.
Thank you, Chair. National Policy Framework paragraph 130F states that new developments should create safe, inclusive and healthy places, not undermine quality of life. Given that there's going to be increased comings and goings from staff, visitors, service vehicles, this can change the character of what is a quiet residential area. What's Highways' thoughts on the increased comings and goings based on the fact that there's going to be 24-hour care? So there's going to be service vehicles, emergency vehicles, staff coming and going through 24 hours, not your standard residential sort of comings and goings.
To take the question.
Good evening, through you, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak. So the YMCA have provided information confirming that at any time they'll have a maximum of 3 staff on site, and they've also confirmed that, as you've probably seen from the site visit and the details that Adam presented, that they've got 3 existing parking spaces within their site. So I did actually question them quite extensively. We had Teams meetings with the planning officer where I raised concerns myself with the potential parking impact of the development from when it was initially proposed. I think as a similar number of YMCA units as there presently has been as student accommodation, which is obviously now reduced to 49 in what's presently proposed. And I asked them to confirm what their movements would be, what their maximum numbers of staff would be on site. And they did confirm, as they've mentioned in their documents, that it would be a maximum of 3 staff at a time. I think employed totally, they said about 6 staff or 6 to 9 staff, but these other staff would either be managers or off-site staff, or there'd be rotating staff that would replace the staff that are on site at any one time. And so therefore I was quite confident that they had provided the parking needs that they needed for the site. In relation to servicing, they didn't make mention of any special requirement for servicing beyond what you'd typically expect for a student special accommodation such as this. I would expect it probably to operate as would be expected for a typical residential accommodation. You'd have your bin lorries turning up once a week that would collect. I think this is a commercial entity, so the idea was it would be collected by a commercial provider. and I think sort of like other than that, they only mentioned that there may be occasional visitors, but from their wide amount of accommodations they have elsewhere in Gloucester and Cheltenham, they have generally very low visiting numbers to these units and to these individuals on a 24-hour basis. So on that basis, I was comfortable with the parking provision they provided on site. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
I just remembered what it was. It was just to say, how long has the building been vacant for?
We understand that it's been vacant since the end of the last academic term, of last academic year.
August 2020.
Councillor Tracy.
Be all over, which is good. And I'm right in thinking what you did say about the warden, but I didn't realise, is it 3 wardens taken in turns? You mentioned something 3, I thought warden day or night. For the wardens, because that would, you know, be great really, wouldn't it, if this did go through. My question is, if the you can have a sleeping warden 24 hours a day, so one asleep at night, so I do alternates. What if one's sick or holiday cover? Do they have a floating one? Because you need to cover all this before you start, you know, saying yay or nay. Because being in that situation, I know sometimes they don't have people in. It's just a break, yeah. Does that one? I might ask you.
There is a management plan, but that's not really a planning question, Pam. Yeah, but we're not into debate yet. Okay. That's your question? Right, thank you very much. That's okay. That's okay. Councillor Whittle.
Thank you. I just want to point out that Councillor Jones is incorrect. It hasn't been vacant since August 2023 because that was in the minutes of a previous. So you found it in the agenda, but that's the minutes of a previous meeting. So we still don't know when it was vacant, but I believe we've been told since the end of the last academic year.
Very low use by the university for a number of years.
Any more questions? Councillor Lewis.
I was down there for 5 hours on Sunday afternoon. It's called When King Goes Rocking. And there's no problems with traffic and parking and all the rest of it. So 3 cars ain't going to make a lot of difference. But I was just, you're happy with what happens at King's Home when 11,000 people turn up and they all parking up Denmark Road? You're happy with that to a certain extent?
I think what you're referring to is an existing issue with Kingsholm Rugby Stadium. I'm aware, I think, as we are generally, of the issues for parking when it comes to rugby match days. But unfortunately, that is an existing issue. Although I take your point completely about it, and happy to take away any comments or queries you want to raise with my colleagues if need be. But I think it's unrelated to this application on highways grounds.
Any more questions? One more.
Yeah. We haven't talked so much about, you know, unwinding and everything when you're shutting rooms, etc. And about the community rooms. So am I right in thinking there's one community room on the ground floor, and you spoke about a gym? That wouldn't be added in, but that would be up to they probably have a students or meetings to ask for that. Am I right in thinking that? Like billiards and table tennis or something outside, you know? And how many roughly would it hold at a time? If they wanted a Christmas party or something. Or meeting room. I'm going to ask these questions because it's a big thing if it happens.
It's a training room.
Because it is, you need a community room that works.
So this slide is the ground floor that we went through earlier. So that L shape, the blue L shape in the bottom right, is the proposed sort of residence training, meeting, consultation room, as they've labelled it at the moment. That's the area in relation to which I've discussed with the applicant, you know, could that be something else like a gym? So that would be open to the YMCA to do. And as I understand it, the way they approach that is they leave it to the residents to be proactive about suggesting it. So if they've got a load of people that want a gym, they might do a gym. If they've got a load of people that might want something else, they might do something else. The point from a planning perspective that we have asked them to commit to, and they've agreed to this, and it's in condition 5, is that they provide that internal space for residents' use to the dates that they've discussed, because they're looking at this phased implementation should it go ahead. So that's what the date relates to. And they have committed to, and it would be secured by the condition that they provide that L shape. What ends up being in there is open to the residents and the organisation. I'm afraid I don't know how many people it would hold.
Okay, are we ready to go to a debate? Okay. Councillor Harris.
In my eyes, I think this is a ideal use for this building. In thinking what it's not needed as student accommodation, so what else can it be used for? I think for housing vulnerable people that need help, we have a huge need for supported housing in the city. I think this is ideal for it. I think as well, knowing that it's a move-on style of supported living. So obviously I know they've got Potter's Place in Russell Street, that's where a lot of people might go first. I've got some friends that have been through places like that as well, and they found that when they then moved on to the next place that was a move-on accommodation, that helps them massively in then getting to that next step of independent living and moving on. So I think this is a brilliant use for the building. I'd be happy to support it. My only concern with it is about obviously the open space. There isn't really any on site. There are those couple of benches that we saw in the pictures. And I note that the green space, the kind of traffic islandy type area, only has one bench and one bin. I think that probably would need to be improved as a condition on this application, because you've got a change in nature of the type of residents that will be living here. Students typically go to off to universities in the day. The people here are they're vulnerable. They don't really have much to do, and I think some more benches, so that if it's a nice sunny day, they can get out the house, get some fresh air, I think would be definitely needed in this situation. But other than that, I think it's an ideal use for the building. I'd be happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Chair. Agree with what Liam said, apart from the benches. That's a traffic median. and it's going to get cut 2 or 3 times, and I think it's just not practical, mate. I see where you're coming from and all the rest of it. And to be perfect, the rest of it, the biggest safeguard is the funding. They don't do what they're supposed to do, they won't get their funding, and so they won't be able to do it. And that's a massive thing. So whatever we say, how was it, Homes England, something like that, they will be dictating what can go on there, what can't go on there. And with all the safeguards going in, the people going in there are going to be responsible from the City Council housing people. And so we're going to know who's going to be going in there. And it's going to be the sort of later stage, so that they'll be integrated into society and things like that. It's a no-brainer. If somebody misbehaves and they got the people in where, they'll be out. And they will know that when they go in there. They'll probably sign a contract or something arranged. They'll have to abide by the rules, or they're out. So I don't think there's any problem with it. I do understand where some of the residents would be worried about it, but having done some of this stuff for years yes, after done some of those things after 25 years of it, I understand, mate. And so I know that wherever we put these, there will be the odd troublemaker. There's the odd troublemaker anyway, but they will be dealt with and sorted. I got no problem supporting this whatsoever.
Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry, you need to be quiet. Thank you. You have to leave. Councillor Stephanie Chambers? Oh, sorry, Councillor Marshall. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. I just think it's really important that this goes through. I do understand residents' concerns, but having lived next to a psychiatric hospital for many years, I've had no problems with patients that live near me. And I've worked in a mental health unit, and they have all the safety and everything put into place. All walks of society live in supported accommodation, so we can't just stigmatise people. That and we have to go with this application. It's going to really support people in the local. It's going to support them and integrate them into the local community with employment opportunities and activities. I think that the green space, having looked at it myself, looks absolutely fine. I think it needs a bit of renovation, obviously, but that's what the YMCA are going to do it up. And we've got a shortage of houses in the city. And I really think that this would be really good for the housing crisis. And I've known people stay in the YMCA, and they're vulnerable people, young people, teenagers, pregnant mums. It could be anyone staying in the YMCA. And I know that people do have the concerns regarding other YMCA locations in the city, but this one is very specific. All the conditions have been put in place, and everything has been measured really well. And also students can be quite antisocial, but have perform antisocial behaviour at 3 o'clock in the morning as well. Obviously, it's not needed for students anymore. So I'm voting for this application to go forward. Thank you, Councillor Castle.
Thank you. Councillor Stephanie Chambers?
Thank you, Chair. I've been looking through the residents' concerns, and I do understand them. But I think it's fear that they might realise won't necessarily be true. Having worked with Joseph and his team for quite a few years now, they are a really good organisation, and they manage their properties well. And I think looking at some of the national statistics, not all the YMCAs are managed in the same way. There's definitely a lot of trust with the Cheltenham YMCA organisation throughout this council because of the way they do manage their properties. I think the reassurance, none of us know who could live next door to us, but they're going to get reassurance that actually there will be no sex offenders, no arsonists, and no recent violent crime. And I don't know how recent that means, and I know that was a question. What I would probably say to some of the residents' concerns is I used to have the housing planning portfolio before, and I've gone to Cheltenham YMCA with concerns of residents or whatever in the past. and they have always met with the residents. They've always been willing to discuss and work with residents to sort out any concerns or worries that they may have. So I would just say, if this did go through today, that I'm sure that would be the same again at this property. The downside is the outdoor area, because I think it would be better if it had a larger outdoor area for people to use. The one good thing that I see compared to some other temporary accommodations is this has self-contained bathrooms, and I think that's really important. The 24-hour support is also good. So they've got somebody to go to if a resident was concerned, if the police had to turn up, there's always management on site. Under policy, let me just check how to get it right, SD10 of the JCS, it says that vacant or redundant buildings will be, the reuse of vacant or redundant buildings will be encouraged. And then it also states proposals that bring empty housing back into residential use will also be encouraged. So that's quite a strong policy when we know there is a housing need in the city. I like that there's a training room. I think also we are making assumptions that these people are going to be within the building 24 hours a day. I've been to even some of the more supportive accommodations, and people have jobs. Housing, homeless people that I've dealt with, they have jobs, families that they see. You know, these people aren't different from me or you. We don't know where our lives could end up for ourselves. We could be a homeless person one day. So I think we do need to be careful about judgments. And yes, in some of the other accommodations, you might get people that have just come off the street that maybe have some alcohol abuse or drug abuse, but the work that's been done, we're hopefully going to be ironing that out with the other pathways. I think it's very, very encouraging that it has a wheelchair accessible and 2 M42, because in the past we have had a shortage of disability temporary accommodation. So I think on balance it is a very good project. That isn't to ignore the fears of the residents, but I would hope, and as I have seen before with Cheltenham YMCA, they are always willing to work with residents or iron out any issues. So that would be my take on it.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal?
Perhaps I should have asked this as a question earlier, but I do note that the YMCA provides grants to residents for bicycle purchasing. However, the bicycle storage that is available, I wouldn't leave any bicycle there because it would probably be stolen within
That
hours.
bicycle been there for 6 months. Yes.
So I would like to suggest that if this goes ahead, they consider a more secure place to store bicycles, because that open area is just going to be a hotbed for criminal activity.
The actual area where the bikes are, it is a secure area from the front gate. So that might help. It doesn't say that individuals in there might borrow a bike. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to quite a few councillors here have said they've worked with this YMCA previously and for many years, would that not constitute predetermination, monitoring officer? No. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to get into my... So I believe that the site's going to be over-intensified. It's going to be over-intensification. The reason being is the proposed supported living site represents what intensification of what is a residential site there already, and it's not typical for the area. Increased comings and goings of staff, visitors and service vehicles will change the character of a quiet residential street. This will conflict with National Frame Policy Planning Framework, paragraph 130. Also harms residential amenities. Noise disturbance and activity levels will be significantly higher from what's there already. 24-hour care operations often involve late night movements, alarms and emergency call-outs. This conflicts with the local plan policy SD14. Inadequate parking, there's going to be 49 units. Students often don't have vehicles, so there will be more vehicles needed than what is already there. I've identified this, which I go into supported living property in a minute. I won't name the exact one, but I'll refer to it. Incompatibility with the residential character. And supported living accommodation where there's multiple unrelated adults are cared for constitutes a material change, hence the reason we're here from C3 to C2. However, this does not align with the existing character, scale and rhythm of the surrounding family homes. This goes against and conflicts with National Policy Planning Framework, paragraph 130A. Insufficient infrastructural services. Students often leave their student accommodation to go home to see their regular GP. This will not be the case here. It's going to put on sufficient, there's not enough GP or social care at the moment. This is going to put on severe breaking points to what's going to be the current doctors' practices already. It's going to place strain on local services, contrary to paragraph 8B of the National Planning Policy Framework. Safeguarding community safety concerns. If the supported living residents have complex needs or behavioural risks, which we know they do, there could be safeguarding implications. While there will be safeguarding implications for neighbourhoods, households, especially children, there's a school adjacent within 100 metres. I'm going to go on to some more points about that in a second. Lack of suitable outdoor communal areas. There is not enough outdoor communal areas. You're putting people that have got behavioural concerns, that have got complex needs into an outdoor space that's not fit for purpose, and it's not fair. You're subjecting these people that have already got mental health capacity issues into a place where they're not going to have enough open space. This is not fair, and what you're doing is inhumane. Community impacts. There's already too many HMOs in the area. King's Home's got the highest HMO allocation in the city. So this is going to increase the 10% properties within 100 metres. There's several properties I noted on the presentation that had been missed, which are already HMOs. I haven't seen the detailed management plan showing staffing levels, shift patterns, contacts with complaints, waste collection arrangements, etc. This goes against contrary to National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 55, which expects robust management mitigation measures for intensive uses, which is not here, which is a planning defect. So I'm going to go through to supported living. This council approved supported living accommodation 2 years ago in Kingsway. I'm not going to mention the provider. The outdoor space is unfit for purpose. It was 22 residential apartments, and the outdoor space is not fit for purpose. The residents congregate outside by the primary school, swearing, spitting, throwing cigarette butts on the floor, drinking alcohol, throwing cans on that, and there's a significant build-up of rubbish. Every day, if I pass there now, there'd be a fire engine there because people end up doing self-harm, burning things, burning materials, burning fabric right next to the primary school, which I raised concerns at the time. There's also significant drug use as well. You can see through the windows disposal of syringe bins, and we've not been told that there's going to be no one with drug issues. Furthermore, there was a man that's repeatedly showed his private genitals to store primary children in the area, who's since been moved on. And parking is not adequate. There's 22 apartments, the car park's over allocated, and it puts sufficient extra pressure on the local properties in the neighbourhood. So for that reason, I can't vote for this, and I think it's not the right space. We do need supported housing. We do need a good provider like the YMCA, but I don't think this is the right space for it. And there's other suitable places like Ecclesiastical Old Building in town and other empty buildings that have been empty for many more years than this. Thank you.
Right. I came along here thinking, no way. I'm not going to say I've changed my mind at the moment. And when we were on a site visit, what you're just saying did cross my mind, because we had Denmark Road turning out. We also had King's Own Primary School turning out. The funny part about it, and I think I made it, I think I did say it too often, say, look at all the cars, and all the people in Denmark Road School were being driven home by their parents in the cars. Can you remember that on site? And there wasn't one child walking along there. And also, the King's Own Primary School, I didn't see any young children there, but that was absolutely going on in my mind. And I thought, the residents, properties, thinking, oh my God, this building's up here, devalued. And then looking at it, and then the more trouble I've been having was from the new housing estate, those new houses going up on the Civic Service Club land. And we've had lots of response from there with different things going on. And that's why I came. I thought, oh, not another one. Right on the, and everything you discussed in here is what was going through my mind. And I know you came to the chamber and said, oh, you should have voted that. We need accommodation, but this is a different kind of accommodation. This is where I'm thinking now, and this has really changed me, where we are thinking of the vulnerable, and I know YMCA hopefully keeps their promises. We had YMCA, it's what's now the Spartans Club, and it was King's Own Community Centre upstairs, but they sold YMCA. But I can honestly say, when YMCA was down by the wreck, we didn't have any problems there at all. It was more a social club, etc. And I know where, the residents are coming from, and it's right on that corner. And I don't think these people who will come along will have cars. It's the only car problem we got with highways is the in and out service users or doctors or people visiting, or might even want to park their car because their person works in there to pop up into town, but that'll be all regulated, hopefully by the wardens in there. So I looked at it again this evening, and I think where we're coming from, and the previous speaker who said he lived along there, in YMCA, they do have residence groups and such. And I would like, if this went through, that they would invite a few neighbours to sit on their residence committee in YMCA so they could be in control of it as well. And I think that would really work out well. And I'm sure the person who was speaking could add a lot of things there into YMCA. And it could probably work to their advantage as well. And that's what I'd like to see. And it would, I'm going to finish with a comment from Jeremy Hilton. But I have been turned, and I think YMCA, God bless them in everything, they will keep their words. And I really, really got to give thanks to our planning team who put all this together. It's been hard work for them. And I'm glad we had the site meeting, and I really hope and pray we will all have site meetings again. So I'm going to finish on the words what the ward councillor said, Jeremy Hilton. What he said was, if this don't happen with a respectable person for the application, what would we be having there after that? What would be on that site where the residents would be moaning? So you've got to think about that. It's got to happen. And I really put my trust into the YMCA, involve the immediate residents there. And so now I've been guided to vote for it. So I'm going to vote for YMCA, and perhaps I might even be able to sit on the committee. One never knows. But I'm going to vote for it. Sorry, but anyhow, so no, so I would like to vote for it. I will be voting.
No more debate? I'd just like to say that I visited the site yesterday. I agree that I'm a bit concerned about the size of the outside area. I don't think there should be benches nearby. Benches in the back area. I understand the fears of residents because it's the unknown, and everyone doesn't like the unknown. Can you be quiet, please? Everyone doesn't like the unknown, but we do need this housing. And as Councillor Hilton said, my concern would be, what would that turn into if it wasn't used for that using? And also the question about putting pressure on the GPs, when you think that there was accommodation for 84 students, and we're going down to 48. So those are my comments. Anyway, if you are happy with the officer's recommendations, propose to accept the recommendations outlined in the report. This is to grant subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Can I ask for a seconder to support this? Okay. 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 Can we go to a vote? Those in favour? I'm really, no, I'm not going to vote for it. Sorry.
The 7.
And those who are against? Those who abstain? I'm just not, I really am like that, I'm sorry.
You've got a result.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been passed.
Carried.
Okay, this has been carried, so it's passed, and we're on to the next item now. We can invite Councillor Condor to come through.
This is agenda item number 7. Everybody's ready for this. It's section 106 biannual update. And the Principal Planning Officer is going to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. This is a report that we bring to you every 6 months. Hopefully you can see from the report that month on month things are becoming much more streamlined and organised than 106. We're now having regular meetings with key stakeholders, removing completed 106s from land charges, and we're making full and proper use of the AXACOM system. Progress has been made on some debt recovery, and there's also spending continuing on the public open space so that we haven't had to return any monies in this period since we last reported to you. Our policy team's also working with the Gloucester Nature Park to secure a more Gloucester relevant BNG site. So lots has been going on. Just draw your attention to a few elements in the report. We had a payment which was made to us in error that we're returning. That's a matter for Tewkesbury. We have also secured the start date for the play area at Plot Court. That's likely to start in November, once now that we've got a successful tenderer to do the work. You'll recall from the last update we had an issue with the playing field that was laid as part of the Miller Homes development. We're now in discussions to agree terms of the relaying of that playing field. And we've got ongoing discussions on the Bishop College money with One Legal to ensure that it's spent in accordance with the agreement. So that's a quick run through of the key points of the report. Also attached to the report is a spreadsheet, which we present each time. So that's the update for this session. We'll be back to update this in March, but we do more regular updates to the senior management team, the next one being in December. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions on the contents? Councillor Stephanie Chambers.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to show my appreciation for the work that's gone through this, because it wasn't organised before, and actually this is really important that we do this work. And I know the work is done by the officers, but to look at it and understand it better and what's going on to make sure nothing's missed is fantastic. The question I have is in regards to the agreement that was void and we had to return the money. Has a sort of review been done about why that was void, and is it something that could have, you know, the writing of it or something could have been done differently so it wasn't void, or is it just an issue that couldn't be helped, or just a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, so what happened in that case is during the planning application, which was an application with Tewkesbury Borough, wasn't our application, it was agreed that a contribution would be made to meet Gloucester's needs for public open space and sport. That decision was actually determined by a planning inspector, and the planning inspector determined that that ask didn't meet the SIL 122 tests, so that's statutory tests. So that to secure that payment, it would have to be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. So otherwise you would refuse the application without that. And it has to be directly related and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind. So I don't know exactly what the inspector concluded, but I have had the documents sent over to me so I can review them to see exactly what the inspector decided. But clearly the inspector decided it didn't meet those tests, and therefore he couldn't, in his determination, issue the payment, issue the obligation to the city. So that was a decision out of our hands and out of Tewkesbury's hands. It was determined by an inspector. But clearly we're interested in, as well, understanding what can we do better next time, what evidence do we need to justify an ask that would meet the SIL tests in the eyes of an inspector.
Thank you, Claire.
Councillor Carnfield.
Thank you. I'll stick it in, sorry. Yeah, my questions are to do with you said the relaying of the Miller Homes playing field. Can you go into more detail with that, please?
Thank you. All I know what is in the report tonight, I'm afraid, which is that we're discussing terms for relaying the playing field. Obviously, the work was substandard and that was brought to this committee previously, but officers in the public open space team are working to rectify that matter. I could get an update for you and send that to you. You might have noticed Nana's not here tonight, so but I will get a more detailed update and I can circulate that outside of the meeting.
I have seen the report on it. And also the discussion with One Legal or ongoing concerns Bishop College site to establish parameters of the 106 funding, which I thought the 106 funding had gone to Plot Court to be spent in the children's play area.
I believe there's more left in that pot from the Bishop's College site, and what we need to do is check that we're spending it correctly, because obviously that's legally tied in a Section 106 agreement. So we need to be sure that what we're wanting to spend it on, we can technically and legally do that. So that's what officers are looking at the moment with One Legal. So obviously we want to be all above board where we're spending that money and make sure we're meeting the tests and that where we're spending it is relevant, directly related and necessary. So it's an ongoing discussion. So that could potentially be about the playground then, if you understand that that's already been assigned to the playground. But I will go back and check if that's the full spend of what's left, and I can report back on that point. But the main point being that we want to make sure we're doing it properly, and we don't want any situations where we're refunding money that we've sought and collected from planning applications.
Thank you.
If I may, Chair, I've had a bit of a look at that one already. Obviously, it's in with One Legal, and other people look into it as well. And there are issues around the Bishop's Court and then the Escort area as well. So it is very much an issue of which bit falls into which 106 and where it's to be spent. And so there are a number of us actually looking at that to try and make sure it's consistent. Yeah, happy to keep you in the loop.
Because I've been really involved with all of
Yep, happy to do that. Yep.
Are there any more questions from members? We can move into debate. Does anybody want to discuss this? No, that's fine. Are members happy to note the content of the report? Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to Nana for preparing it. We move on to delegated decisions now. Are members happy to note the delegated decisions? Everybody in agreement? Yes, thank you very much. And that brings the meeting to an end. The next meeting will be Tuesday, the 4th of November at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.